Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name's Ivana. If you are new here, today is Wednesday, March the 3rd, and we've got a little bit of a stray of course topic today. I know a lot of times we talk about the hot news of the day, but this one's actually been hot news for a couple of weeks now, and that is the vote for unionization at Amazon's Bessemer Center. Now, we've got our own business reporter, Bill Thornton, here. Bill's going to tell us about some very high profile people that have come out in support of this union vote in Bessemer at the Amazon Center. And we're going to talk about what's next. So, Bill, I know voting has already started at that center. It's going on, I think, through the end of the month. We'll get more on the actual nitty gritty of this vote in a minute. But first of all, there's been some pretty well-known names releasing statements in support of this vote.
Well, this week, probably, obviously the biggest name was President Biden. The statement that he put out on Sunday was shared on social media through the White House accounts and everything. And it may be the most forceful presidential statement for unions in 70 years. I mean, that's kind of the consensus that's forming around this. But on the other side, you've also got the NFL Players Association, which represents the players who play professional football. Yesterday, Major League Baseball Players Association supported or sent out a message saying that workers should vote yes for a union. Senator Bernie Sanders not only sent out several tweets showing his support, but he also sent pizzas to a union rally that was a couple of weeks ago in Bessemer. Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor of Georgia, she has given some support to this. Danny Glover, of course, he came about almost 2 weeks ago to actually stand out in front of the place, talk to people. That was kind of awkward because he had his mask on. So occasionally the organizers would have to point to him and go, "Hey, that's Danny Glover," to people who were coming out of the place. People were impressed by that, though. But, he has done this. He did this a few years ago for workers that were trying to organize at an auto plant in Mississippi, for example. But I think he told me it was his first time out since the pandemic started. So obviously, to come all the way from California for that was a big shot in the arm. But they've had several of these endorsements, and I would imagine that there's probably more coming. I think the strategy here is to keep these endorsements coming through the end of the month. Votes are supposed to be counted on March the 30th. Ballots are supposed to be on the 29th. So I would imagine there's probably going to be this kind of rising tide, of endorsements that will come in probably, through the end of the month.
I thought that your story about Danny Glover's visit to the facility was so interesting because I think you mentioned in there that he had his mask on and he was standing outside with the sign, and there were some people that were driving by, had no idea who he was. And then I think you heard somebody drive by and say, "Oh my gosh, that's Danny Glover." So it just goes to show even celebrities sometimes can't be recognized with these masks on. It is a disguise. But Bill, the statement from the president came out, I believe last week or this weekend, I should say. You said that was a huge announcement from a president. I think you said in several decades there had not been such a support of a union. But what exactly was surprising about that message?
Well, okay, so most of the presidency and labor have had a very up and down relationship. Probably the most pro-union president we've ever had was FDR. And he was president when the National Labor Relations Act was usually called the Wagner Act was approved by Congress, that set up the idea that employees can collectively bargain through unions. But even Roosevelt never came out and gave as forceful a statement as Biden did on Sunday. Biden came out and said that workers have a right to collectively bargain, that they should be allowed to vote to be in a union. And that they should be free from any kind of intimidation from their employers or managers, whatever. I had a professor that I talked to in relation to that story about the effect of the address, who said that during the 30s and 40s, unions would put up a slogan that said, "The president wants you to join a union," meaning FDR. But even FDR never made a statement quite like Biden did. And it came after several weeks of people, lobbying him to make some kind of a forceful statement in favor of the union. And this kind of goes back to this whole struggle within the Democratic Party over its more left-wing elements and its more centrist elements. How far do you want to go? Well, Biden, did everything but say Amazon. He said workers in Alabama. So it's obvious that he was referring to the Amazon vote without actually making a statement against a company. Amazon's a huge part of American commerce, as everybody knows. So what he did was he was presidential in that he made his statement, but he also made it in such an oblique way as to keep it from being about one particular company. As somebody pointed out, that Amazon is the most high profile, but it's not the only union vote that's going on right now.
Now, and this is the if this vote goes through, this would be the first Amazon facility to unionize. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
last time somebody tried to do that was about 7 years ago.
And this center, I know there's a difference in a fulfillment center and a distribution center. So which type of center is this Bessemer location?
It's a fulfillment center. Basically, you're dealing with a lot of merchandise, and the people inside are fulfilling those orders, making sure that you have everything in there that's needed. They're I believe that for the purposes of this election, there's about 5,800 employees that are taking part in this. But it's employees, it's robots, it's conveyor belts. It's just a huge operation. I think that when they were about to open it, they said that its capacity would be they could fulfill 100,000 orders a day. So that gives you an idea of the kind of space you're talking about, the kind of workforce you're talking about. And I would imagine that prediction was made before a pandemic, when everybody in the world started ordering things off Amazon that they would normally go to the store to buy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point there. But something I think a lot of people ask is, look, this distribution center, if they vote to unionize, if there's a union there, are other Amazon facilities going to be affected by that? Are other distribution facilities going to be affected? Or fulfillment, excuse me.
This vote only affects the employees at this fulfillment center. What people are pointing to is they want, what they're pointing to is the potential for, say, dominoes falling. If it happens here, it could happen in other places. But this is only going to affect those employees at that center. And once again, Alabama is a right to work state, which means that you cannot be forced to join a union. You can't be forced to pay union dues. So it will only, obviously any kind of vote will affect all the employees there. But people who are there who don't want to be in the union won't be forced to join if it is approved.
We've got a comment here from Dave, and I think that a lot of people share the sentiment. Dave says this will chase them away. I'm assuming he means Amazon. If the unionization vote goes through, if they do form a union at this center, that Amazon will not want to do further business in the state, or will not want to make more centers in the state. We know just over in East Birmingham, there is a distribution center planned. We have another center in South Alabama. So this is big business here for Alabama. Is the union vote, is that going to decide whether we continue to get these facilities or not?
Well, that's a good question. We're dealing with a huge corporation. The only question is whether they would want to, cut from whatever they've spent already in terms of this center here, in terms of Birmingham and everything. But let's be honest, Amazon is a huge corporation, but they still need the ability to distribute their products, to fulfill orders, and they came here for a reason, because of the location, in terms of being able to accommodate this area of the country. So the idea that they're going to pull out, arbitrarily because of this union vote, it's a possibility, but I would say that there's other things that they could do to show their displeasure other than just, say, cutting Alabama off. I mean,
what are those? What are those ways? What could they do?
Well, I mean, just think Well, just think about it for a second. Okay, so let's say they close down Bessemer. They're still going to have to fulfill orders in this part of the country. The Bessemer Fulfillment Center doesn't just accommodate Alabama. It's part of their southeastern network, and their southeastern network, like other parts of the country, is still growing according to the demand. So, it's like I said, it's possible, but you know, um, let's just say they could do it because of the size of the company. But um, I think there's other things that they could do. Um, in terms of shifting their weight to other fulfillment centers or whatever, maybe not hire as many people, there. But you know, I don't run a $1 trillion company, so I don't know.
That's true. I'm sure sometimes you wish you did, Bill. Now,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these people, I know we mentioned them at the top, but some of the people high profile that have voiced their support for this union vote are the MLB and the NFL Players Association, actor Danny Glover, President Biden, Vice President Harris also released a statement, Bernie Sanders, and Stacey Abrams. So we know that Bernie Sanders sent some pizza to one of these events last month there in Bessemer. What about Stacey Abrams? What was her comment?
Well, it's just a general show of support. A lot of these statements that are being put out have basically been to encourage workers there to vote yes. They're stating their right to organize. In Biden's case, he said you should be free of intimidation. It's kind of a standard statement. A lot of them harken back to the traditional position of labor in Alabama. We did a story about that a few weeks ago about, steel and coal obviously were very organized in the earlier part of the 20th century, even up to, say, the mid 50s. And a lot of them have, I think I'm trying to remember Stacey Abrams' actual statement verbatim, but a lot of these statements have also pointed out the fact that you have a very large African American workforce in Bessemer and trying to tie it to the civil rights movement.
That's interesting. I'm looking through some of these comments that are coming in, and everybody seems very polarized on the issue. But I think there's a comment that's very interesting to me, and this is from Shannon. I'm assuming Shannon works at the center, but she says, this is not about y'all. I think meaning everybody commenting. And she said, it's what we want as a whole. People speaking about the union that don't work there do not have the voice. The only people who have the voice are the people in the center voting. And she's absolutely correct there. And she said, all I can say is that around my area, we are happy. What are you hearing from people, assuming like Shannon, who work at that center? What are you hearing from the employees there and how they feel about this issue?
Well, it's funny. The both the union and Amazon have made employees available to talk to the media. Outside of that, you don't hear anybody actually wanting to go on the record about this. And there's several reasons for that. People obviously don't want to jeopardize their jobs. They don't want to put themselves in any kind of jeopardy going forward, either with the union or with, the company. And you mentioned the polarization. Yeah. There is, anytime that I publish any kind of story about this, I get accused of being, a shill for the union or a shill for the corporation, so take your pick. But the thing that I think you hear more often from the pro-union employees is the idea that they want management to be responsive to their needs. There's this feeling of disconnection. And, we could talk all day long about what it would be like to try and start a job in a place during a pandemic when you're socially distanced and there's, kind of that barrier, not only with bonding with your coworkers, but also bonding with any kind of management or whatever. On the other side, if you don't want to join the union, there is this feeling that I got this great job and it's paying me, $15 an hour and everything. And I don't want to mess that up. And I don't want somebody coming in and messing that up. Basically as a power play. You hear people talk about the fact that they don't want to be involved in a strike and they don't want to be involved in, all these worst case scenarios about what happens when they think unions organize. So, I think that there's there's plenty of stress on both sides, and also, you know, this is a story that's being covered by the national media on every level, social, TV, web, print, all over the place. And when things like that happen, you know, people's nerves get rubbed raw. It's, hey, you don't know my story. You don't know what it's like to work here, both good and bad. So I think there's plenty of tension there in terms of, you know, you want to tell your story, but you also feel like you can't, and you feel like the story that's getting out is not the one that you see every day. So, you know, I think there's a lot of that going on for both sides too.
Just to follow up here from Shannon, she said after being there nearly a year, everything's great. My managers are approachable. They care. They really care. They asked me about my newborn. She said everything is wonderful there, and I think it's interesting too. I've got another comment from Kristen. We might have to contact you, Kristen. She says my husband and I both work there. We love it, and we voted no. And I think that as you mentioned, there are some people who are very outspoken about their decisions. Like we've got Shannon, we've got Kristen and her husband, but then we have some people who are afraid of voicing their opinions on it, who want to do this privately. And I know there was some talk about doing these votes privately with a kind of mailbox issue happening at the Amazon Center. Can you give us a little bit of a look at what was happening there at the mailbox?
So this you have to remember, going back to last year when they were talking about the mechanics of how you would do an election in a pandemic. Amazon offered to do a ballot in the parking lot. And the National Labor Relations Board said, no, we're going to do this as a mail-in vote because of the pandemic, and it'll take place from the beginning of February through the end of March. That'll give plenty of time for people to get their ballots, to mail in their ballots. Okay. So then not too long after the ballots went out, this mailbox appeared, you know, there at the fulfillment center outside under a tent. Well, when they were first talking about the election in person, Amazon was talking about having a tent outside. So in some ways, they're trying to set up the same kind of mechanics of what they were proposing before. Then the people were encouraged to put their ballots in by March 1st. Well, the deadline is March 29th, you know, so the union was saying, hey, this is bad tactics. And the idea that the union has is that if people are voting in person at the workplace, that is a way for the company to put pressure on them to vote a certain way. Say if my manager or anybody is there and they see me put it in there, then they assume perhaps that I'm voting this way or that way. Whereas if I send it in my mailbox from home or slapped by the post office, nobody's going to know how I voted. So, you know, that's one of the arguments there about, the company argues that putting a mailbox there, the post office is the one that collects the mail. We don't have any control over that. And we're just making it more convenient for the workers, you know, so, you know, draw your own conclusions there.
That is how it seems like a lot of this whole situation has gone, Bill. A lot of
Yeah.
issues that are going to be interpreted one way or the other. So we appreciate you just giving us the facts here and letting us know what's happening. So I know this vote goes on through the end of the month. We will, I'm sure, have you back and talk a little bit more about it. Anybody here that is coming in our comments and telling us how they feel one way or the other that works at Amazon, feel free to contact me or Bill. We would love to hear your story. You can contact Bill at wthornton@al.com. That's W Thornton. I know I call him Bill, but that is how it goes. Mine is iherandq@al.com. We will leave those in the comments here for you if you're interested. Bill, thank you so much again. And it sounds like we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Bill. Everybody watching, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.